Welcome to the Heritage Hunters Podcast with Dawn Piercy and the Heritage Huntress, where we are climbing trees and turning leaves. Grab your saucers. We've got tea and it's about to be spilled. Welcome to a new podcast and Tudor Now and the Heritage Hunters Podcast collaboration today. I am your host, Dawn Piercy, and I am bringing the one and only Tony Riches, international best-selling author. Tony, how are you doing? It's great to have you on today.
I'm great. I'm speaking from Tudor, Wales, and I'm really grateful to be invited.
Well, I love it. Tell us a little bit about your history. I know that you were born in Wales and then you grew up some in Kenya.
Yeah, well, I was actually born in Pembroke within sight of the castle where Henry VII was born. And that's what started off my interest in the Tudors, was that I wanted to learn about Henry VII. And do you know, I struggled to find a book that was interesting. This is 15 years ago now. And so I started researching to write one. I was already decided on a career as an author, by the way. And I gathered enough information to write a trilogy, which became the Tudor Trilogy, where Henry is born in the first book, comes of age in the second, and becomes king in the third. And do you know what happened? The first book sold over 10,000 copies in 1 month.
Wow.
On Amazon. And I wasn't geared up for that at all. I really didn't expect that. But it's what it was. It was an accident of timing, because there were no books, historical fiction books, that had as much authentic detail in as mine did, you see. Now there's all sorts of people are doing the similar sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I don't think I'll ever sell 10,000 books in a month again. But it went to number one in the States, it went to number one in the UK, and then the best thing, which was a nice surprise, it went to number one in Australia.
Wow. That is amazing.
Which is a hard market to crack.
Could it be because you're from Tudor, Wales, Tony?
Yes.
Yeah. So, and if for people that don't know, Henry VII was born in Pembrokeshire Castle. I think that's the name of the castle, correct?
Yes. Pembroke Castle.
Yeah. So
Margaret Beaufort was only 14.
14. Yes, she
14.
was.
Yeah.
Wow. Man, they were so young back then, and people don't take into account a lot. I hear so many people, I want to be a princess. No, really, you don't. Trust me. No, you don't.
You know that she nearly died and couldn't have any more children after that. So there was a tragic side to it. But Edmund Tudor is only down the road from me in St. David's Cathedral, about half an hour's drive from my house.
Uh-huh.
And he desperately wanted to make sure there was a Tudor heir. It was obviously the Wars of the Roses and
Right.
the Yorkists. So it was a great story. And I was amazed to be the first one to tell it in the kind of depth that you get when you write a trilogy. When you write a single book, then it's fairly limiting, because you have to spend most of your time trying to decide what to leave out.
Right.
When you write a trilogy, you've got all the space you need. So my wife and I we followed in the footsteps with Jasper Tudor and Henry Tudor from Tenby, which is my closest little beach town.
Thank you for doing this too, by the way.
We went through the secret tunnels underneath the streets of Tenby that they went through, and then we sailed across to Brittany, and we actually tracked down the chateaus that they stayed in exile. and one of them in remote forests of Brittany, my wife said, "Oh, you've got cobwebs all over you." And I said, "Well, that's good because that means nobody else, not for a long time, has been in this room and looked out of this window that Henry and Jasper would have looked out of."
That's beautiful. I was able to go to St. David's Cathedral via live stream with the Castle Crew that I'm a member of, and I have the screenshots of all the tombs of my ancestors. And now,
Right?
are you descendant of any of these people? Have you found?
No, sadly not. But my wife is a descendant of a lady called Eleanor Cobham, which is
Okay.
one of my. I was inspired to write one of my other books about. She's very much into genealogy, and she suddenly said, "I'm descended from Eleanor Cobham," and so I researched her story and wrote my book about Eleanor.
Well, that's amazing. Now, I went and got a DNA test after I found people on my tree, and sure enough, it tested subclad 0 and how um, delta 0, and I thought, oh, well, I guess that's right. So, but now you covered not just the Tudor trilogy. You covered the Elizabethan area, and you also covered, you have the Brandon trilogy that you did in
Yeah, well,
2018 and 2019.
what happened was that at the end, spoiler alert, at the end of book 3 of the Tudor trilogy, Henry dies, and Henry the Seventh, this is, but he's nursed on his deathbed by his daughter Mary, who's a young girl. And I got fascinated by her story because her little brother, Henry VIII, married her off as soon as he could
Oh, I
to
know
the
it.
aging King of France. And I thought, I wonder what she thought of that. So
Oh,
I started researching it. And the early historians, the Victorians, wrote that she ended his life fairly quickly by being over vigorous in bed. Not a very likely story. I think it's not a very likely story. So I
no.
actually decided to tell Mary's story properly. And of course, as I researched it, I realized that what I'd seen on the Tudors was not right. They
That's
merged, the
correct.
television series, The Tudors,
Yep.
they merged Mary and Margaret
Mm-hmm.
into one person. Was it to save money, do you think? It certainly confused
I
people.
think it's laziness a
And
lot of the time, maybe not knowing and wanting to smush it
yeah,
all together
well,
too to make it more
um,
interesting.
Charles Brandon is not Henry Cavill. He's actually really quite an interesting character because he grew up with Henry VIII and taught him to joust, and of course nearly killed him in a joust when his lance entered Henry's helmet, and that could have been history changing, couldn't it?
Wow.
Uh, and
Yeah.
basically, um, of all people to send to bring Mary back from France, Henry decided to send the handsome and unmarried at the time, Charles Brandon. He said, "You will promise you won't abuse the privilege at all." And the rest is history because I managed to get a whole trilogy out of that.
Well, I love it.
And of course,
And I'm glad that it went that way because, well,
well, it's interesting. It's interesting for Mary because she did end up marrying for love. I'm convinced of it.
yeah.
And there's plenty of evidence, if you like, that it was a love
Well,
match
and I believe that
because they took a
Margaret
huge.
was deeply in love with James the Fourth too. I do believe
Yeah,
that
well,
because the way she stood there out of the tower, because I was able to go live stream to the tower that she stood out
oh
of
yes,
and
yeah.
waited for his return, which he never returned. I just bawled.
Well,
I bawled.
if
Oh,
anybody thinks that it wasn't a love match, that they took such a huge risk. They
they
risked
did.
the anger of Henry VIII. And would you want to do
Oh,
that?
oh, I call him Grunkle Henry,
Yeah.
because yeah. So that's no, I no he
But
was off the hook.
the
Oh,
reason it became the Brandon Trilogy
yeah.
was because pretty much the moment that poor Mary died, Charles Brandon promptly married his 14-year-old ward, Catherine Willoughby. And even the court of Henry VIII was scandalized by that,
I didn't even know
because
this.
it was like not the done thing. You don't marry your ward. You're trusted to safeguard your ward. The clue's in the title, isn't it? And she just happened to be the wealthiest heiress in the country, Catherine Willoughby now.
Maybe that's
And
the reason he married her.
her mother was Maria de Salinas, who was not just the lady in waiting, she was companion to Catherine of Aragon. So she was the Spanish companion that came across when Catherine of Aragon was 15. They were both 15. And she went right through the six wives. So Catherine Willoughby knew every one of the six wives and had opinions about each one. But of course, she was closest to Catherine of Aragon. So she wasn't a great fan of Anne Boleyn and
Right.
actually spoke out against her. And then one by one, and she ended up as best pals with Catherine Parr. And if you look in the frontispiece of Catherine Parr's book, Lamentation of a Sinner, you'll see who it's dedicated to is a nice jolly chap called William Cecil and
Oh, that's
Catherine Willoughby.
these are my grandparents, my
Yes,
ancestors. Yes, yes.
there's the circle of life
Yes, it is.
continues.
Yes, it is.
And I became fascinated by William Cecil, and that inspired me to tell the complete story of the Tudors, all the way from Owen Tudor's first meeting with Catherine of Valois, right through to the last days of Elizabeth I. And of course, trying to write about Elizabeth I is almost an impossibility. She's such a complex personality.
Yes.
So
Oh, yes.
I decided to write the Elizabethan Trilogy, which was to take three of her favourite men, each of whom had a very different view of her. So the three I chose were Drake, who worshipped her and used to present her with caskets full of jewels and pearls and grovel at her feet. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the second one was Essex, Robert Devereux, the son that she never had. And people used to say that they were lovers because they would stay up past midnight playing cards. It wasn't, I don't believe there was anything in that, because they were like a mother with a naughty teenage son. And he used to
Yeah.
speak in front of her most irreverently and scandalize the place. And then the last one that I chose was a chap called Walter Raleigh, who you definitely know because that got me into American history then. And the whole Roanoke and
Yep.
all of that business, and Virginia. And I suddenly realized that telling the story from the point of view of three men, Raleigh was the captain of her guard, by the way. So she was his employer.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So that's three different perspectives, but they all overlap and they all knew each other. And they were envious of each other in different ways, which was quite fun to write about. So I chose to continue it and make it into a 6-book series and choose three of her ladies. And I deliberately chose her less well-known ladies. So the three that I chose was Lady Penelope Rich, who was actually Robert Devereux, the Earl of Essex's elder sister. That's how I discovered her when I was researching him. And she was married off. She was a fun-loving party animal, and she was married off to a dour Protestant Puritan who thought that music, dancing, and singing were the acts of the devil, who thought he would lock her away in his mansion and just raise an heir with her. So that was really quite good fun to write because she was a woman ahead of her time and
Now,
had no
is
regard.
she related to Richard Rich by chance? He's an
Yes.
ancestor
Well,
of mine.
Richard Rich was Robert Rich's father. So it all
Okay.
goes back.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm from
It all
Richard
goes back
Rich,
there.
and I was
That's
wondering
where
if you're from that family because your last name is Riches. You
I'm
could
glad I'm
be.
not, because Richard Rich was very, very cruel man to people like poor Anne Askew and others. But anyway, the second of my three ladies was equally fascinating and little known, was Frances Walsingham, who is the daughter, the only surviving child of Sir Francis Walsingham, the
Okay.
Queen's spymaster. And by chance, guess who she married? The Earl of Essex. So there's a crossover there. And they were the most unsuited couple ever because he was a philanderer and she was quite devout. But she was also better educated than most men and helped her father decode secret messages about Catholic plots and the coming Spanish Armada and poor old Mary Queen of Scots.
Oh, yeah.
So
Oh, bless her.
all of those big issues of Elizabethan times are covered in the book about Francis. It's Francis with an E, by the way. So her father was Francis with an I.
Okay.
And once again, she ended up nursing him on his deathbed in Seething Lane by the Tower of London. And so I had one more lady to pick, and I chose Bess Raleigh, the long-suffering wife of Sir Walter Raleigh. And she was so loyal to him because he was in the Tower for years. And when he was let out the Tower, he promptly did something which got him put back in the Tower again. And she stood by him through thick and thin. And my wife and I actually went to the Tower of London, and these days it's called the Bloody Tower because of the princes in the tower. But
Yeah.
at the time they were there, it was called the Garden Tower. Interestingly, because Walter Raleigh was allowed to have a little garden where he grew herbs and a plant called tobacco, which he thought was going to be profitable. How wrong could he be? So he popularized, but we actually stood in their cells, which also happens to be the cell upstairs where, of course, it's thought that the princes met their end. But what a fascinating thing to have the privilege to write about.
Most definitely. Most definitely. You also wrote a book on the Kingmaker. Can you tell us about that?
Yes. It seemed incredible to me that Warwick could actually do such an about turn in the Wars of the Roses. I mean, it does seem implausible, doesn't it?
Yeah.
If you saw it on television, you'd think, well, that's a bit far-fetched. Because
Most
why would
definitely. I just covered an entire season on the Plantagenets and coming out of the Kingmaker and the end of the War of the Roses and Elizabeth and the princes in the Tower. And I just want to know more. I just want to know more and more and more.
Yeah, it was. I found it fascinating researching Warwick in great detail. My brother actually lives in Barnet, which is obviously where the Battle of Barnet took place. So I managed to, in the museum in Barnet, I managed to write a special piece, which is on display there, about Warwick and his part in the battle, which was, it's interesting because that's probably going to be there long after my days.
Well, yeah. Do you ever plan on writing a book about Margaret Tudor by chance or any of the Stuarts?
Well, it's funny you say that because I'm now working on a Stuart trilogy. And what I did I rather fortuitously managed to introduce Anna of Denmark because she visited Walter Raleigh in his cell
Yep.
because she wanted one of his potions that he'd made for her son, the king we never had, Henry Stuart, Henry Frederick Stuart, this is, who,
Okay.
for a bet, when he was the golden boy, the hope of the country,
Uh-huh.
and he was in the UK. He was the Prince William figure, really.
Okay.
You know, he was being not just groomed to be king; he was going to be king, and there was no two ways about it. He was everything that his father wasn't. You know, poor
Uh-huh.
King James might have aspired to be handsome and dashing and charming and all of those things, but actually Henry Frederick Stuart really was. And then I don't know if you've seen the River Thames recently,
I
but would you
haven't.
like? Oh well, it's much better than it used to be, but in those days it used to be a nice, convenient sewer where you dumped everything you didn't want into the River Thames and it would get washed out to sea. And for a bet, Henry Stuart said he would swim the River Thames. And he did, he succeeded, and he won the bet. Probably a fairly notional amount of money or something.
I hope he showered
But
afterwards.
no, no,
No.
that's what he should have done. He should have worn a full hazmat suit, I think,
Yes.
because sadly, uh, spoiler alert again, he caught unknown diseases for which they had no cures. And
Oh.
that's why we ended up with his little brother, Charles, as king. And
Oh.
it didn't end well, did it?
No, it did not. No, it did not.
So, I'm really enjoying the Stuarts because I consider myself something of an expert on the Tudors, but I must have nodded off at school because we seem to go from Elizabeth I dying to
Uh-huh.
the Civil War.
Ah,
So we kind of skipped
right.
all the people
Well,
writing
here in
about now.
America, we don't learn about anything of the UK at all. Actually, we learn about the French and Indian War, the British War, and America, 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 and it's just like kind of stuck there. And we don't learn. So I'm doing family history 35 years, and I have a breakthrough, and I'm like, oh, these are people
Yeah.
that I love learning about that I never got a chance to learn about, but I see them on paper. I see the documents. I see the archives. I see, um, I don't know them as people, so I don't know what they did. And then
Well,
I go out into the world and I'm like, oh, they did what? Who?
would you
My
know?
my grandparents, what? So it was kind of like almost like a humbling experience for me, not knowing any of it.
Yeah. You're not alone. You're not alone because a lot of people think that Henry VIII's sisters were one person called Mary Stroke Margaret, as in the Tudors.
Right, and they're not. And people get all the time. I see people getting mixed up. Mary the First of England, Mary Tudor, and
Yeah.
the daughter, Princess Mary, and Mary Queen of Scots. And I say
I
no,
think
they're
that's forgivable.
cousins. But you have to understand that Mary Queen of Scots is Mary Queen of Scots is the granddaughter of Margaret Tudor, the sister of Henry VIII, Mary the First father. So there's a
I
little
tell
bit
you
of a step there. Yeah.
what I like to do when the way I work is I do my research in the summer when the weather's nice, and I like to visit the actual locations and get a sense of the people and also track down primary sources to get a sense of their voice if I can.
Uh-huh.
And when I went to pay my respects to Mary Tudor, Queen of France, at her tomb, across the road was a place called the Moyes Museum.
Okay.
And in the Moyes Museum is a lock of Mary Tudor's hair, which they
Oh.
took from her when they moved her tomb from the abbey into the church. And I found it quite moving to actually look at this lock of
Yeah.
golden hair and think that very much likely is I'm actually looking at Mary Tudor's hair.
Yeah.
Don't you find that kind of thing amazing, really?
It is. It is. With the even the castle crew, we go see a lot of relics, and in the
Yeah.
cathedrals and in the abbeys and even in some of the castles where, they had the Bonnie Prince Charles, which getting into the Stuarts, and they had the cast of Mary Queen of Scots' hand and what
Oh,
supposedly was her
yes.
hand. And
Yes.
she had this pinky that stuck up. That's actually a genetic trait, Tony. That is
Yeah.
it is her
Well,
hand.
there we
It
are.
is her hand. I can tell you that 100%. It's a genetic trait that your pinky sticks. Yes. I seen that and I was like, that is her hand. I was sitting there looking at my hand and I was like, oh my gosh, I got chills. I got so much chills. And I'm excited. I want to read your books. I'm going to be putting on tudornow.family.blog, which is where the main blog and the podcast is going to be. And I'm going to put a link to all of your books. So anybody that comes and listens, they can just go to your site. They can purchase your books.
Yeah.
If you
The
are a fan of kings and queens of history and you love history, you're a history lover, Tony is an international best-selling author. There's a QR code. Scan it. You won't be sorry. Read his books. Follow him and make sure that you catch the ones that are coming out too, because his research is so good. That's why he is an international best-selling author. Tony, it has been so great having you on Tudor Now and the
Well,
Heritage
thank
Hunters
you very much.
podcast
I've
with
enjoyed talking to you.
a new
And
podcast. Yeah.
I think I should come back when I've done my Stuart
I would love
trilogy
that. I would love
because
that.
there's so much good stuff. I've just had a letter translated, which was in Old French from Anna of Denmark, and I had no idea what it was about. I can speak a little French, but not Old French, so I got a specialist to translate it. And I wonder if that's the first time ever that letter has been properly translated by an expert in Old French
Wow.
into English. And what I've done is I've put it in my book because I think it's such a big deal.
You know
It's a
what?
proper primary source.
I have an old document from Louis de Orleans and Mary de Guise that is in French.
Yes.
And it's in cursive in French. And I have no
That's
idea
right.
what it says.
Well,
But you reminded me of that.
luckily, this lady in France, she translated Owen into French for me. That's how I knew her. And I said, would you have a look at this letter? It took her quite a while, actually, to translate it because it was in very old, 1593
Oh,
French.
what I wanted to do before I let you go, are you aware that Owen David Tudor, the offspring of Owen ap Tudor, came and colonized America? Are you
It's
aware of
amazing.
that? I
It
have
is amazing.
I have
Yeah.
all of the documents on it. I put it up on the podcast because I thought, how many people do not know that during the Elizabethan area and after that the Tudors came to America to help colonize
That's right.
Connecticut and Windsor, Windsor, Connecticut. And I have his launder bill. I have the family kind of stuff that you get, not the stuff that's out there, but I have like his bills that he paid while he was here and stuff.
While I remember, all my books are available as audiobooks as well as ebooks and paperbacks.
Amazing.
And just by the way, the two books, the one about Essex and the one about Raleigh, the narrator put all the sound effects on. So when a cannon fires, it really fires.
That's cool.
And when a horse gallops off, it's really impressive. But the last one I've just had done, my newest book, is Bess Raleigh, and that's narrated by a wonderful actress called Ruth Redman. and I find it amazing to hear
If it
Bess's voice
if it cuts
talking to
off,
me.
Zoom. That's Zoom. Not me. Just in case you know.
No, that's fine.
Now, TonyRiches.com, that's your website, right?
Yes,
Okay. So for our listeners, TonyRiches.com, go check out
everything's on
his
there.
website. Check out the interactive blog. And like I said, he said you can even listen to his books, and they've got all the sound effects with them. Tony,
And there's 19 podcasts as well about my research.
19 podcasts? That's
Yeah.
amazing. Most definitely check it out. Now, TonyRiches.com, that's your website, right?
Yes,
Okay. So for our listeners, TonyRiches.com, go check out
everything's on
his
there.
website. Check out the interactive blog. And like I said, he said you can even listen to his books, and they've got all the sound effects with them. Tony,
And there's 19 podcasts as well about my research.
19 podcasts? That's
Yeah.
amazing. Most definitely check it out.